Looking for some new Core Set 2021 cards? Well, you can get them from our sponsor, Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom has Core Set 2021 up for pre-sale now, and you can check it out over at cardkingdom.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Jumpstart spoilers, and goodness, this set has already exceeded every expectation I possibly could have had for it. So I was expecting, some casual cards, some interesting new historic stuff, maybe a little bit for Commander here and there, but in the last day we have gotten a major, massive, huge list of really important Commander reprints. And remember, Jumpstart, it's a normal set. This is not a $12 a pack, $20 a pack, $100 a pack master set or VIP set or anything like that. This is just a normal set that you can pick up for normal prices, and it is overloaded with some of the most important Commander reprints we have seen in a long time. Literally cards that people have been begging for a reprint of for years, and they're coming in Jumpstart. So I'm super hyped. We got reprints to talk about today, some really interesting stuff that might shake up Historic, some new cards as well. Before we jump into the cards though, a quick update on something we talked about yesterday, which is what cards from Jumpstart are going to come to Arena and be legal in Historic. We were talking about this with Reanimate yesterday. Would it be, wouldn't it be? Well, Wizards, thankfully, credit to them for doing this, is keeping a list of cards that will not be coming to Arena, which means they will not be part of Historic, obviously, if they're not on the client. There are 20 cards altogether, and I wanted to make sure I shared this with you. So as we were talking about cards today, you'll know essentially all the cards we're going to talk about are coming to Historic, but I'll leave the link to this page in the description to this video. So if you want to check on it here or there, keep an eye on it, see what is actually going to be on Arena in Historic. These cards on the list: Ball Lightning, Chain Lightning, Exhume, Ferriasir, Lightning Bolt, Reanimate, Scourge of Neltoth, Time to Feed. These are all cards that are not going to be on Arena, and they're going to be replaced by other cards. We don't know what they will be yet. Wizards said they'll announce that later in the state of the program for Arena. But anyway, if you want to keep up on this through spoiler season, there you go. But with that out of the way, let's talk amazing new Magic cards. And actually, not even new Magic cards. Let's start with the absurd reprints that are coming in Jumpstart. So as far as reprints, the list is really long and it is very impressive, especially considering, like I said, this is a normal $4 pack set. So reprint number 1, Oracle of Moldiah. Over $40, Commander staple, has literally never been reprinted. People have been asking for it to be reprinted for years. Coming back with Jumpstart, might have a tiny bit of historic relevance, but really this is a Commander-focused reprint. We also have Craterhoof Behemoth, another $40 card that sees play across formats. It's a staple of Commander. It sees play in Legacy. It will see play in Historic. We'll come back around to this in a minute when we're done talking about the insane reprints. But another super high-value Commander-focused reprint. Then we got Rise of the Dark Realms. Not quite Oracle of Moldiah or Craterhoof expensive, but still a solid like $20 card that sees a bunch of play in Commander. We also got Scarecrow, which people forget about this card. It does see a bit of Commander play, also close to $20 just because it's old and hasn't been reprinted. We got Exquisite Blood, another $40+ card, which people have been begging for reprints. Its friend Sanguine Bond has been reprinted like a million times and it's super cheap. Exquisite Blood, never been reprinted, just keeps growing and growing and growing. Also combos with Veto from Core Set 2021, so there's even more demand for it now. It doesn't end there. We got Ghoul Color Gisa, another card that's close to $20. Vidalcan Archmage, also over $10. And Phyrexian Tower, recently added to the list, another like $20 card. So there is an obscene amount of value coming in these packs. So I don't know how frequently you are going to open these. That is one thing I've been trying to figure out. The rarity with Jumpstart is a little weird because it goes by themes. Like some themes are rarer than other themes. So I think these cards are going to be kind of mystery booster-like reprints where I don't think your odds of getting Oracle of Moldiah is going to be like a standard set, where in a standard set you would open roughly almost an Oracle of Moldiah every other box, a little bit more than every other box. I bet it's going to be higher in Jumpstart, most likely, but still, these are really powerful, really expensive, much needed reprints. Some of them, like Exquisite Blood and Oracle Moldiah, that people have been asking for literally years. We're talking like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. People have been saying, please reprint this. We need it for Commander, reprint it. It's finally coming, and it's coming in a $4 a pack set where anyone can pick it up. It's as cheap as M21 or whatever. So shout out to Wizards for nailing it with the reprints. Like, I'm sure we'll get some more trickling in, and we have some more decent ones we'll talk about as we go along today, but these are the best ones, and even if this was all the great reprints we'd get from the set, it has already exceeded my expectations for Jumpstart far and away. So awesome job, Wizards, to give us these super sweet reprints that I don't think many of them are going to be super relevant for Historic on Arena. Obviously, they're reprints, so they're not going to change anything in like Legacy or whatever, but these are cards that you're going to be able to get at a discount for your Commander decks, which is awesome for paper players everywhere. As far as the playability of these cards, outside of just being Commander staples, there are a couple of reprints that I wanted to mention for Historic on Arena in specific. One is Exquisite Blood, which obviously the big deal is it's going to get cheaper for Commander, but it's also a 2-card combo with Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose, which will now be legal in Historic. Basically, Veto makes it so if you would gain life, target player loses that much life. Well, Exquisite Blood is the opposite. If an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So if you can get down Veto and Exquisite Blood on the battlefield at the same time and either gain a single point of life or have your opponent lose a single point of life, you basically just kill your opponent. Your Veto will trigger, which will trigger Exquisite Blood, which will trigger Veto, which will trigger Exquisite Blood, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until your opponent's literally drained out of the game. So while I don't know if this will be competitive, traditionally, like Sanguine Bond Exquisite Blood has been a Commander combo, not something that has shown up in competitive decks in the formats it's legal in. So I don't think this is going to be like new tier 1 in Historic, but it'll definitely make a sweet against the odds combo. Definitely something to build around in the format. So I'm definitely excited to give this combo a try, even though I expect it to be more of like a fun, janky way to win the game than competitive. Still super sweet to see this 2-card combo coming to Historic on Arena. We also got some elves, and this is, we'll get to our reprint in a minute, but it's important to talk about these cards in general. So one of the themes of Jumpstart is elves, and we got a couple of major reprints for elves in Historic, with one of them being Elvish Archdruid, one of the best elf lords available because not only does it pump your elves, but it taps for mana equal to the number of elves you control, which allows you to do crazy things, dump your hand really quickly, snowball elves into more mana, into more elves, and eventually a finisher to win the game. And then Dwinian's Elite is really good with Elvish Archdruid because it makes 2 elves for the price of 1, which means if you have Archdruid out, it's essentially free. Like, you get 2 elves, which at the cost of 2 mana, but those 2 elves make 2 mana with Elvish Archdruid. So these are elves that see play in Modern Elves. I think Dwinian's Elite might occasionally show up in Legacy Elves, not in high numbers, but these are definitely constructed playable elves that are now coming to Historic, and to go along with them, we get a new Mythic Elf. And this card, I think, is going to be super legitimate. See play not just in Historic, but in Legacy in paper as well. So Allosaurus Shepherd, a 1-mana 1/1, it can't be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered, and you can pay 6 to turn all of your elves into 5/5s and dinosaurs until end of turn. So Allosaurus Shepherd, this is kind of like a cross between Gaia's Herald, a very upgraded version where it's only 1 mana and it works with every green spell, not just your creatures, and it can't be countered itself. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Azuri, where it has this somewhat expensive ability where you can make all your elves huge, because elves tend to go wide, be very small. They need some sort of pump to win the game. Kind of has this Azuri-like pump ability. You don't get trample, unfortunately, but still, just turning your elves into 5/5s is very likely going to let you overrun with your Dwinian Elite token and all your random Llanowar elves and stuff on the battlefield. So I think Allosaurus Rider is definitely a big reason to play elves in Historic, and this is where Craterhoof Behemoth comes back in. Craterhoof has traditionally been one of the best finishers for an elf deck, and I think now that it's in Historic, it's going to do the same thing there. We have the ability to make it uncounterable with Allosaurus Rider. We have Elvish Archdruid, also like Llanowar, to make a ton of mana, Dwinian's Elite to pump our Elvish Archdruid and to go super wide. So you just ramp into Craterhoof Behemoth, play Craterhoof Behemoth, and if there's one thing we've learned about Hoof over its history in every format, is it's just basically always lethal. Like, you play some creatures, you play Craterhoof, your opponent dies. That's how Craterhoof Behemoth works. So I am actually legitimately hyped about the potential of elves in Historic, and Allosaurus Shepherd in specific, because of the way it's worded, where it stops any green spell of yours from being countered. I think it's going to see some play in Legacy as well. It works as a backup payoff where you can get up to 6 mana. Elves make just oodles and oodles of mana, so it's really easy to get to 6 mana, and this can win the game by itself by pumping your team. Also, the most common way for elves to win is using Natural Order, this 4 mana sorcery that lets you sacrifice a green creature to tutor up a green creature, but most commonly use Natural Order to get Craterhoof Behemoth. And because Allosaurus Shepherd says green spells can't be countered, that means your opponent can't daze or Force of Will or whatever, Force of Negation your Natural order, giving you a guaranteed win against cards that are super heavily played in the format. Like the way that Legacy decks keep themselves from dying to unfair things, like a fast natural order into Crater Hoof, is Force of Will, and this totally prevents it. So Allosaurus Shepherd, this card's a big deal. It's going to see play in Legacy, I believe. I'm not an expert there, but I think it will, and it's definitely going to be a big deal combined with our other elves and Crater Hoof Behemoth in the Historic format. So very excited. I would not be the least bit surprised to see the elves is a legitimate, maybe even top tier deck in Historic with the new additions it is getting from Jumpstart. While it's been the reprints that have mostly had me hyped for Jumpstart today, there's some really cool new cards as well, with one of the most important, in my opinion, being Scholar of the Lost Trove. So Scholar, it looks like a random casual card, 7 mana 5/5 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery from your graveyard without paying the mana cost. And then if it is a sorcery, it gets exiled like it would with Snapcaster. This card, at first reading, it doesn't seem that exciting. However, as someone who builds against the odds decks, this has been a card that I have literally been scouring the multiverse for years. It didn't exist. You probably won't believe me when I say this, but there is literally only one card, and definitely 0 creatures, in all of Magic that allow you to cast an instant or a sorcery from your own graveyard without paying its mana cost. So it's a little Torrential Gearhulk-like. Torrential Gearhulk was close, but it only gets instants, and some of the biggest, baddest, most exciting spells to flash back happen to be sorceries. Scholar of the Lost Trove is like Sins of the Past. Sins of the Past does the same thing, minus artifacts. The problem is, Sins of the Past is a 6 mana spell. The power of Scholar of the Lost Trove is it's a creature, which means it's way easier to cheat and to play than a spell. So what are we doing with Scholar? Why am I so hyped for this CB casual card? Well, the answer is, there's some absurdly powerful sorceries. Worldfire, Enter the Infinite, ultimatums that cost a ton of mana, but essentially can win the game, or at least do really cool combos when you resolve them. With Scholar of the Lost Trove, you could suddenly cheat these into play on the cheap. And I know if you just look at it, you're like, wait, Scholar's 7 mana, you're not getting that big of a discount. Well, the reason I'm hyped for it is it's really easy to cheat creatures into play. All you gotta do is play some sort of reanimation deck where you have reanimates and exhumes and unburial rights. You can use whatever drawing and discard effects to get your Scholar in the graveyard, along with your Worldfire, Enter the Infinite, whatever big sorcery you're trying to reanimate. Then for 1 mana, you could reanimate or exhume, and not only do you get the Scholar of the Lost Troves, you're also getting a Worldfire, or an Enter the Infinite, or an Ultimatum. So I think this card is actually going to be a really big deal. Even though it doesn't look like much, it's just an effect that has not existed on a creature in the entire 27-year history of Magic. And it's a card I've been waiting for and looking for. So I'm sad that we can't play it in Modern. Legacy, Commander, Historic. I guess we'll have to do some Historic combos with it. But this is a card that I've been waiting for a long time. It enables all kinds of janky combos, being able to get those big expensive sorceries in your graveyard and cast them on the cheap with the help of reanimation. We also got Lightning Phoenix, and Lightning Phoenix, I mean, it's fine. 3 mana 2/2 flying haste. It can't block, and at the beginning of your end step, if your opponent was dealt 3 or more damage this turn, you could pay 1, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this, I mean, it's a reasonable backup for like Arclight Phoenix. It just so happens that Arclight Phoenix likes to be in the graveyard and hits for 3 damage. So I can imagine some sort of mono red, or maybe is it Phoenix style shell coming to Historic where you're playing both of these, just stocking your graveyard, getting back your Arclight, hitting your opponent, which gets back all of your Lightning Phoenixes, and then you have all these hasty flyers you just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. If there's anything we've learned in Magic's history, it's things that cheaply and easily come back from the graveyard can be really powerful. So I would not be surprised if some sort of spelly, phoenixy, lightning strikey, wizard's lightning-y deck in Historic can take advantage of it. Even though I don't think it's a busted card or anything, it's not as good as Arclight Phoenix, but it is worth keeping in mind for the Historic format. We also got Witch of the Moors, which I like the effect of this card. I think it's probably a little bit too expensive to really be competitive in Historic, but 5 mana, you get a 4/4 Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacks a creature, and you return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So definitely something you can play in a life gain, some sort of black-white life gain Karlov Commander deck. I think that is an easy home for Witch of the Moors. If you can repeatedly gain life, it only works on your end step. Keep that in mind. It's only once per turn cycle. As far as Historic is concerned, we do have ways to make this work. Like Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven is a really consistent way to trigger Witch of the Moors. The question's going to be, is a 4-mana 5/5 just too expensive for a deck? Obviously, if you live long enough and this just sits out on the battlefield as your cat oven looping, it's going to be insane. Like, you're just wrathing your opponent's board slowly. You're also getting your creatures back from the graveyard. So it's essentially a 2-for-1 every single turn for free with Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven. I'm just a little bit worried that 5 mana might be too much for it to see play in Historic, but definitely a powerful card. Could also play it in some sort of Blood Artisty, Cruel Celebranty, Woe Stridery sacrifice deck, like a typical Aristocrats deck without Cat Oven. We are getting Blood Artist, which we'll probably talk about again in a minute, but we're getting Blood Artist in Jumpstart as well, which means now Historic has 2 Blood Artists with Cruel Celibate and Blood Artist. We just got the free sack outlet in Theros Beyond Death and Woe Strider, so if you want to, there's definitely the pieces to build this deck. So, Witch of the Moors, I think it's going to be a casual favorite for life gain decks in Commander, and might have a tiny bit of chance in Historic, although I'm a little skeptical of the mana cost. If it was like a 3-mana 2/2 with the same ability, or even a 4-mana 3/3 or 2/2, I would be a little bit more hyped for it. I'm just worried that 5 mana is a little bit much to get going, but if you get it going, it's super strong. In the world of reprints, mostly maybe sort of relevant for Historic on Arena, we got Assault Formation, one of the better butt fighting cards, making all your creatures assign combat damage equal to their toughness rather than their power. You can also pay a mana to let a defender attack and pay 3 to pump your creature's toughnesses. So this is kind of exciting because it gives us more redundancy for the butt fight deck. We got Huatli, we have Hyler. Assault Formation might be the best of this effect, honestly, in Magic. It's the cheapest, it can pump your toughness, which is nice. So this might mean that we can actually play a wall attacking butt fight style deck. We also got a couple of really sweet walls reprinted to go with it. Overgrow Battlement, definitely a modern playable wall at various points, just tapping to add a mana for each defender you control. So if you have a bunch of defenders, this can make a ton of mana. Then you can, like, I don't know, maybe Crater Hoof with your Assault Formation and use the mana to let your defenders attack and trample over and win. Wall of Blossoms, definitely a modern playable wall. It still sees play in Modern to this day. Just a good blocker that draws a card when it comes into play. If you want to play the Assault Formation deck, it's going to be great, or a wall style deck. Also, just a good value-y blocker against aggro, like a 0/4 blocks for days, and it replaces itself with a new card, which is good. We also got a new card to support the archetype in Towering Titan. So a 6-mana Mythic Giant, and it enters a battlefield with X +1/+1 counters, where X is the total toughness of other creatures you control. So let's say you have an Overgrown Battlement and a Wall of Blossoms. You cast it, it's going to be an 8/8, but if you get even more walls and more toughness on the battlefield, this could definitely end up at 20/20 or even higher. You can also sacrifice a creature with Defender to give all your creatures trample and end to turn, so you can cash in one of your walls and just trample over with one big attack to win the game. The one thing I really dislike about Towering Titan is the fact that it is a 0/0. Traditionally, cards like this, you really want them to have at least 1 toughness, so if everything goes completely wrong and your opponent rest your board, at least you can still cast it and chump block if you have to. Not ideal, but the fact that it dies when it comes into play if you don't have any other creatures on the battlefield is a drawback. On the other hand, I could definitely see some fun jank with this, even outside of just going and sacking your walls and trampling over for the attack. You might be able to get this up over 20 power if you play enough walls with high toughness, and then just fling or thud it at your opponent, which would be pretty hilarious. So Towering Titan, I don't think this card's good, but there are funny, fun, casual things you can do with it, and if you're building Assault Formation deck, this is another good payoff, because it can be massive if you have a bunch of high toughness walls on the battlefield. We also got some burn spells, and here, the first 2 are actually coming to Historic. The second 2, while they are being reprinted in Jumpstart, we don't have the actual images yet, they are not going to be in Historic, so don't get too excited, but Grim Lavamancer and Magma Jet are both very solid burn style cards. So if you're a burn aggro player, this does give you some new toys. Magma Jet, the scrying is actually really valuable. Grim Lavamancer, we'll have to wait and see. It's very powerful in fetch land formats, because fetch lands get cards in your graveyard, which then you can exile with Grim Lavamancer to repeatedly shock something every turn. Without fetch lands, formats, it's a little worse, but it is a wizard. We have wizard style decks, so if you're playing some sort of wizard burn deck, Grim Lavamancer probably going to have a home there in Historic. So definitely keep those in mind for wizards and like bird style decks in the Historic format. We also got Exclude, a pauper staple counter spell. 3 mana, counter a creature spell, draw a card. Maybe could have some relevance in like a tempo style deck, mono blue tempo. You're paying 1 more than Essence Scatter, which is kind of the go-to counter spell for creatures in more recent formats, but you get a cantrip added onto it for that additional mana, so we'll have to see. It's very good at pauper. Maybe it'll have a chance in Historic as well. Otherwise, in the reprint world, Blood Artist coming to Historic, which we talked about briefly before, but I think this is a big deal because if you look at aristocrat style decks in formats like Pioneer or Modern, typically you want 6 to 8 Blood Artist effects, and the problem in Historic is all we had is Cruel Celebrate, but now thanks to Blood Artist itself, we can go all the way up to 8, which is going to make the Woe Strider or Cat Oven style sacrifice aristocrats deck way better, way more powerful in the format. So keep that in mind as you're building. Aristocrats might be a legit deck in the Historic format. We also got Young Pizzy, Young Pyromancer, actually showing up in Historic. Gonna be interesting to see what this does. This is a card that sees play all the way back to Legacy. You just play it and you cast spells and you make a bunch of tokens. It's very powerful in any sort of spell-based cantrippy spell slinger deck. So I assume it's gonna see play in Historic as well. We also got some interesting artifact stuff. Thirst for Knowledge, great card draw effect if you are an artifact deck. Kind of like Thirst for Meaning in Standard right now, but Thirst for Knowledge sees a little bit of play in older formats. It saw much more in the not super distant past, but draw 3, discard 1 for 3 mana instant speed is a great deal for card draw. Also, Chromatic Sphere normally shows up in like Egg style combo decks, Tron style decks in Modern, but gonna be interesting in Historic. Maybe you can play it with like Karn, Emery. There are some good payoffs, Sai, that just want you to play artifacts and draw a bunch of cards and churn through your deck, so this definitely powers up those archetypes. We also got Riptide Laboratory, which, oh boy, I'm a little bit frightened about this card. It is a colorless land that allows you to, for 2 mana and tapping it, return a wizard you control to its owner's hand. There was a time in the not super distant past where there was a top tier legacy deck built around using Riptide Lab to bounce Snapcasters, bounce Vendilion clicks to reuse their enter the battlefield triggers. You can block with your Snapcaster and then fizzle the damage by picking it up, then recast it in like Brainstorm or Swords to Plowshares. And while we don't have Snapcaster or Vendilion click in the format, we do have some other options, like, for example, Merfolk Trickster. Pretty good thing to repeatedly use to stay alive. Baron, a new addition, drawing you cards when you bounce other stuff back to your hand and bouncing stuff itself. Gadwick, every single turn, is going to generate a ton of card advantage. Frilled Mystic has a million creature types. One of those is wizards, which means if you can get up to 7 mana, you can kind of do the cycling lock that we did with Escape Portal and Standard with just Frilled Mystic in a land. You like cast it, counter something, then bounce it back to your hand. The next time your opponent casts something, cast it to counter that, bounce it back to your hand, and have a permanent counter spell again and again and again. So I think the Riptide Laboratory actually going to do some things in the Historic format. If there's a good news, is that wizards are not like a top tier deck, and you don't really especially want Riptide Laboratory in like Adeliz aggro wizard decks. If you're trying to go like 1-drop, 2-drop, Wizards Lightning, Wizards Lightning, Wizards Lightning, that's not really where you want to be with Riptide Laboratory. This is more of like a grindy, slow, Panharmonicon style wizards deck that we're talking about, but I think in those decks, Riptide Laboratory is a big push forward in playability in Historic. We also got Gifted Aetherborn, not a super exciting card, you probably even know it, it's not that old, but a 2-mana 2/3 Death Touch Lifelinker has proven itself to be one of the better aggro roadblocks, so if you're tired of getting run over by mono red in Historic, this is something to keep in mind, and 2 black pips means it's perfect for like Grave Merchant, Phyrexian Obliterator Devotion decks. I think we almost have all the pieces to the modern mono black Devotion deck. I guess minus Nykthos. We're missing Nykthos. But really, we have almost all the pieces to modern mono black Devotion available in Historic, thanks to Historic Anthologies giving us Obliterator, Grey Merchant coming in Theros Beyond Death, and now Gifted Aetherborn, the best 2-drop for that style of deck, coming in Jumpstart. We got some more dog stuff too. Isamaru, it's okay. I mean, it is legendary, but a 1-mana 2/2 is on curve, and then Release the Dogs. This is a new card, but I want to mention it because 4/1/1 dogs for 4 mana, that is a lot of dogs. That is relatively on curve. And if you're building a dog deck, which, again, I don't think dogs are going to be competitive, but there's just not that many good dogs in existence because we just got the creature type. So you're going to need any playable card you can to make your casual dog deck work. And both of these are easy additions if you're building a semi-competitive dog deck in Historic. Otherwise, a bunch of random new cards, not a whole lot to see here as far as being super playable. Our KO Mender is kind of nice. You get to return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand when it comes into play. As a 3-mana 2/3, maybe there's some potential there. The other stuff I don't think is really going to see play anywhere, but I wanted to mention it and also give you the reminder that I think we got like 150 spoilers today, including all the reprints and the new cards, stuff we've talked about, stuff we haven't talked about, which means there is an infinite number of cards that we just can't get to because there's too many of them, but you can find them all over at mtgpreviews.com. So check that out if you want to see all the spoilers from today from Jumpstart and in the future sets as well. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Jumpstart spoilers for today. So what do you think about all these new cards? What do you think about the absurd reprints, the Crater Hoofs, and Rise of the Dark Realms, and Ghoul Color Gisas, and Oracle of Moldias, and Exquisite Bloods, and Phyrexian Towers that we've been asking about for so long? Is that going to get you to buy this set? Is that going to allow you to build new Commander decks? What do you think about all the new cards that have some potential? Our new Elf, is that going to be legacy playable? Can Elves, thanks to our new cards, and also like Archdruid, Indwinian's Elite, can that make the deck legitimate in the Historic format? Grim Lavamancers, what's that going to do? Having more Blood Artists, can that make Aristocrats a thing? Even though we aren't getting all the cards in Historic, I gotta say, this set is making me super hyped for the Historic format, and it is going to shake things up. It is going to make it way more fun, and I just can't wait for this to get out on Arena and we can start building new Historic decks. So what Historic deck do you want to build? What Commander decks are you going to build now that the cards will get cheaper thanks to these reprints? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back tomorrow with more Jumpstart spoilers. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.